You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is September 10th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today we have a little bit of a sad show today. Charlie Kirk was assassinated doing his outreach for TTUSA in Utah at the university there. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the travesty injustice that occurred in Charlotte with a poor immigrant woman who was murdered on a train there. So we'll talk about some of the implications of that. And finally, for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, we will jump into ball snatcher Karen of Philadelphia and some of the issues around that. But this was a pretty hard show to put together. This happening just today and all the emotions going through. So hopefully we'll be able to share some good content with you on that, though. So before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. It is just me and Leon today. Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty, a retired engineer in the state of California. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So we always start out with a quote of the day, and today it seemed most appropriate to have Charlie Kirk as the quote of the day, and I think it really goes to the spirit of what he was doing, and so I'm going to bring that up. And it says, if you want to be a rebel on college campus, fight for freedom. And I think that really exemplified the mission of everything he was doing there. I mean, we've seen the universities have just essentially almost been putting out a level of derangement and poisonous ideas out in the society for a long time. I mean, it used to be universities were places where you would go for higher education and really deep thought about conflicting ideas and how to work out those conflicts. And today we have so many deranged ideas just coming out of universities that people are afraid to question. And sadly, Charlie Kirk, in questioning that, gave up his life today. And so that's a truly sad thing, and we're going to talk about that a little more. But I think this was his mission, and it was a well-lived 31 years. So what do you think, Leon?
Well, I have to say this hit me hard, okay? I've never met the man, but I've followed him since he was 18 years old. I'd always admired him because, he was such a young man with such a big vision, and he used to go there and speak his thing and really expanded this little group called Turning Point USA into this massive organization that it became. I understand, I didn't know this before today, but Turning Point now has like 300 full-time employees and God knows how many volunteers that work with them. So to see what Charlie Kirk became, it was something to really admire. So I used to watch a lot of his videos. In some of our private conversation about this, you said that he was a champion of free speech, which is true, but it was larger than that. He was really a champion of freedom. And the quote here indicates that. But beyond that, Charlie Kirk was a man of faith, and he was a champion of the liberty that is lodged and embedded in our souls. That liberty, no one can take that from us. It's part of our human existence. Even during slavery, the slaves knew that liberty was waiting for them on the other side of the fence, and many of them escaped slavery to enjoy the freedoms that come with that liberty that's embedded within them. And Charlie Kirk was a man who wanted young people to understand that liberty is embedded in our souls, And freedom, the freedoms that we exercise, come from that liberty. Whether we're talking about the freedom of speech, the freedom to live your life as you choose, whether it was the freedom to be a property owner, all of those things come, that the exercise of that freedom comes from the seeds of that liberty that's embedded in our souls. And no one exemplified that more than Charlie Kirk, I think. So all I can say is rest in peace. Rest in eternal peace, Charlie Kirk. May God bless you.
I have a little bit of at least sort of a semi-personal connection to this, in the sense that, my daughter, I had taken her to Freedom Fest years ago, and that was the first Freedom Fest we ever attended, and it was because everything was locked down. So we went to North Dakota, rather, or South Dakota, rather, where they have the Mount Rushmore.
Yes,
and,
yes.
and this was after lockdowns, and this was one of the few things that you could count on being open. Because so many things, if anything happened, they were shutting everything down. And so I don't think we saw Charlie Kirk there, but there was a TPUSA table there. And my daughter connected with that, and she was able to start her own high school chapter, that she got motivated to do that. Afterward, she met a lot of people through that program, and made some friends from it. But and we even went to see him speak at UC Davis when he was here, and that was a fiasco all of its own. They had a line of about 50 or 60 policemen trying to protect the place he was speaking at, while these psychotic activists who are just a absolute shame to the university system. The idea that they can't handle having somebody come onto their campus to have a discussion who might have different ideas than them, and they are throwing rocks and breaking windows in their facilities. These are the UC Davis facilities, right?
Wow.
Of course, the chancellor, I think they were fairly unsupportive of him coming as well, because I recall their rhetoric being pretty terrible in the issue. But this was a conservative group that invited him, and at least he was able to do it. But this is the type of environment he was putting himself into constantly.
Yes.
And in this case, it was a somewhat friendly atmosphere in this Utah university, and yet all it takes is one psycho, and that's what we're going to see as we go into the story. But Leon, did you have any other thoughts before we jump into what happened today?
You still have to wonder, how did we go from where we were to where we are now? The UC Berkeley campus was the bastion of free speech. A lot of ideas, we used to go back and forth about it. And now you could go onto the Berkeley campus, and it's probably feel like you're somewhere in the Soviet Union, quite frankly. And you know how great a place the Soviet Union is. It's so great that it no longer exists. But you have to wonder, how did we devolve into this, where these campuses now are places of censorship and violence in some cases, well, the ultimate violence today. You just have to wonder, how did we devolve into this, and where are we going? And are we going to learn any lessons from the assassination of this young man?
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is younger than both of my kids,
Yeah. Well, before we jump into what actually happened today, I did want to make just a little announcement. Let's see, do we have the article? Where is the article? I was going to mention we have Constitution Day coming up next week. It's going to be in Folsom. And sadly, I didn't pull up I thought I had the article open, and unfortunately, I can't find it. So I will try and get that up later in the show. But if you're interested, search for Constitution Day, Sacramento or Folsom, and you'll see that's an event that's going to happen on the 21st, and it is going to be at VFW Center, and I can't remember the street. So hopefully I will pull that notice up before the end of the show, though. But anyway, so let's get into what actually happened. The sad news today. I mean, I heard about it. Mentioned from my daughter. She heard about it from some of her college friends, and yeah, it was sad news. So this was the story. He was let's see, pull that up. So he was assassinated at the Utah University, and
I think the actual name is Utah Valley University.
Okay, and so I'm going to pull up a video that will help to people to understand, because we've been talking a lot about Charlie Kirk, but it would help to see him at work a little bit. And so this video is going to show sort of how he engaged with students and challenged their thinking, and then it's going to show what happened. So anyways, let's jump into the video. So founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated today doing what his mission was, which was to reach college students through free speech and to try and upend the bad ideas from the left that are permeating these campuses with better ideas. And of course, this is all an exercise in free speech. So this was kind of a hard show to put together because this literally just happened today. But anyways, just so you can kind of understand who Charlie Kirk is, let's watch a little bit of an exchange, because this is kind of the norm of what he did. He went to college campuses and he looked for people who disagreed with him for the most part, people who had sort of leftist views on things, and then he tried to engage them in discussion. So here we have an example of a young woman who was arguing with him or having a discussion with him about what the definition of a woman is.
You seem like a sweet person, but can you tell me what a woman is?
A woman? I mean, a woman is someone who identifies with femininity.
So just let's pause. That's not a definition. That's like saying a cup is a thing that looks like a cup. So you got to give me a definition, not just, you cannot use the term in your answer.
Well, I have trouble with that because, I mean, I don't define anything. I don't think that.
So are you a woman?
I am a woman.
You just defined something. You just said, I don't define things, and you went on to just define yourself. So you contradict
No, I'm
yourself.
saying I don't make the definition of something just because I say something is one
Right.
thing.
No, I'm not asking you to make it up. I'm asking you to observe it. Right. So I don't care what everyone's opinion is. I care what is.
So that was a large part of what Charlie Kirk's work was, reaching out to college students and trying to change their minds through respectful dialogue and debate. And I think most people could look at what we just saw and understand that that was respectful dialogue and debate. And that's what we need more of if we are going to get to the truth behind a lot of these issues out there. So anyways, let's go to the event so you can kind of understand from what the crowd was like today at this event where he was in Utah. It looks to be the start of a very positive event. And of course, it was marred by tragedy after about a couple questions.
That's a lot of people, Utah, I'll tell you what.
So the start of what looked like a really positive event. A lot of people wanted to be there. And after at least, I think it was the second question, this is what happened.
Counting or not counting game violence?
Oh my God. Go, run. Oh.
The irony that this happened on a college campus, that this is where we come to as a society, that people cannot handle peaceful and civil discussion and resort to violence when they don't like the ideas expressed by somebody else. It's awful, and that's where we're at. So, yeah, it's and by the way, there is more defined video out there if you really want to see it. It's pretty gruesome.
I've seen it. I've seen the continuation of that. I have seen it. It's not a pretty sight. It's downright horrific if you want the honest truth. You know, this thing that happened to Charlie Kirk on a university campus at that. It didn't just start recently. This thing started, I would say, probably in full in the 1980s. I don't know if you remember when they started off with having speech codes on the campuses. And then speech codes evolve into, we have to have safe spaces and people getting triggered and by every little thing. And then there's the issue of microaggression and all these things. It all evolved out of this idea that people should only be able to hear ideas and listen to ideas for things that they agree with, and only those things that they agree with are acceptable upon the campuses. This is kind of ironic that on a university campus, which is supposed to be bastions of higher education, where the exchange of ideas should be should be paramount in our education, have now turned into these little bubbles of self-congratulations, where indoctrination have become so rigid that people are now being disciplined for speaking their mind, that students are being suspended because if they say quote unquote the wrong thing, when all they're doing is exercising their free speech rights. This thing started in the 1980s with those speech codes, and now it have evolved into this thing where on campuses now there's violence against conservatives, and the ultimate violence occurred today to Charlie Kirk. He was just 31, wife, 2 children, young children. I think the oldest is 3 years old. But we are almost lost as a society if we don't try to deal with these problems that we are seeing. One of the biggest things that I have spoken about on this show several times is the justice system in our great land is now corrupted, in the sense that we are seeing the tolerance of violence occurring throughout our society, and we are seeing selective persecutions occurring. This is emboldening criminals, because if they can look at, say for instance, the summer of 2020, our cities were burnt down by Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and hardly anyone was held accountable. And then you get to the other part of it, the selective prosecutions. We had the J6, so-called insurrection. What did they do to these people? These people were thrown in prison, sometimes held there without trial for months and months and months, if not a couple of years in some instances. And the media always talks about this thing. And of course, now we know Antifa was heavily involved. We know Black Lives Matter was a bunch of fraudulent people using social justice to cover their money-grabbing ways. They collected $100 million and nobody could account for it. Now we know all of these things, and still nobody's been prosecuted. Hardly anybody's been prosecuted for burning down our cities. But the J6 people were treated like crap. This is selective prosecution. But this are the precursors to violence. Because if you could get away with breaking the window, as they say, you could get away with almost anything. So it evolves and it evolves and evolves until they reach a point where having a conservative on campus is like talking to the devil. And since Charlie Kirk now becomes a representation of the devil, it becomes okay to kill him.
Yeah.
Which is what they did.
One of the things too, I think is important to highlight here, and this is where this really comes down to a liberty or libertarian issue in my mind. But part of the reason I think that it's so hard for us to disagree with each other, for somebody like Charlie Kirk not to be seen, like you're saying, Leon, as the devil when he comes to campus, is because government has become so big that our disagreements about it impact our lives a great deal, right? I mean, if we have some kind of a bathroom rule or some kind of a racial rule or some kind of you could just imagine a million different rules out there that there could be that one time or another in the past or present have been in governments, right? And
Yes.
and because government is so big, it impacts so much of our lives that when somebody loses an election, they lose a lot, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of things about their life that are maybe changing in a way they don't like. And this is one of the
Yes.
ironies, I think, with Democrats who very much seem to like government solutions. They seem to have this blind side that there's a chance you may lose an election, right?
Exactly.
And if
Yes.
you put everything in thinking that I need government to do what I want to do in life, if government is about paying for all your stuff, if it's about providing this, that, or the other thing, if it's for protections for everything, if you rely on government and not your own initiative or the market or anything like that, then when government doesn't go your way, it's a big deal. And
Of course.
because we're essentially fighting over a zero-sum game over the same pie. And this is the crazy thing, right? I mean, I think most libertarians evolved to understand that with markets, it's not a zero-sum game, right? Both of us can win. Just because I get my way doesn't mean you don't get your way. But many times with government, that's exactly what it means. If I get my way, you don't get your way. And this creates a hostile environment. And especially for the people who vest themselves in government and believe that they need government involved in their lives a great deal. They tend to lose their minds. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing nowadays and why there's such vitriol going on.
But building on that point, you see, this is just the point. You see, is that government, the famous word that they use, entitlement programs. They are making citizens here. This is what is happening here. The government is corrupting the souls of our citizens by creating these entitlement programs. So the citizen now be feel, well, I am entitled. And you know what they're entitled to? They're entitled to the labor units of another human being.
Yep.
Because the
Through
entitlement
the
programs
magic of government. Only through the magic of government. Only through the magic, the dark magic of government.
Exactly. So the government works their dark magic on us, the society at large, with these entitlement programs, and now we are entitled to the labor units of another human being. That is just one step from slavery. I mean, the government just looks at a nice, a little slick way. Oh, you pay your taxes, you pay your fair share, and it becomes wonderful. But you're creating human beings that feel entitled. And when those entitlements are taken away, you see violence as a result. You see people marching on the street. Oh, they can't take away my Medicare. They can't take away my Medicaid. They can't take away this program. They can't take away that program. And all we're talking about is the entitlement to other people's labor. And that is what the government is doing, is in corrupting people's soul. And you see it, and the end result of that at all times, is violence. It's just like this social justice whole thing that occurred in the summer of 2020, is people feeling entitled. They could burn down people's place, and that's okay. They could even kill people, and that's okay. All in the name of social justice. Is this sense of entitlement that the government corrupts the soul of our citizens with is really the biggest danger. And you're absolutely right. Government is too large. It's too involved in our lives. They're determining too much things about our future. And it's a dangerous trend that we are on. God help us, because we are on the Titanic sailing towards that iceberg out there. And if we don't do something and do something quick, we're going to hit that iceberg, and we're going to hit it hard.
And as you brought up the the George Floyd Summer of Love from 2020.
Yes.
One of the
Yes.
key issues in that, and I think this is the perfect example of that, is the whole statue thing, right? I mean, we had this argument over statues. What an insane
Yes.
thing to have an argument over statues. And the idea that some people, because these statues were in public places, some people said, I don't want that statue. And some people said, I kind of like that statue. Well,
Right.
it's a zero-sum game. Either one guy gets his way with the statue or the other guy does, right? Now, think about how many statues of Jesus there are out there. Do we have a problem with people destroying statues of Jesus in this country? And I say no, because they're all on private property called
For
churches.
all on private property. Exactly.
Exactly. So I mean, these are private groups, private clubs, and they want to get together, and they all like that idea of that statue, so they have that statue. But when you put it out in the public place, you are forcing everybody else to go along with your views one way or another. And maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but this is the problem. It's a zero-sum game. And so we saw that was right at the epicenter of all of that violence, people arguing over statues.
Sure. Exactly. Yes.
And the irony also is that the founding fathers would have been the last ones to want a bunch of statues up there from the government. just a little bit of trivia. We didn't have presidents on our coins until the Lincoln 1905 penny. And that's a real testament to the idea that the only person to appear is Lady Liberty before that, because they knew the dangers of putting images of kings out there, sponsored by the government, whether it be in the money or anything else. And, here we are, we sort of lost our way, with our money, with our growth of government, all those things, we seem to have lost our way. But before we go, if you're watching on public access, we've got plenty more to talk about. But I did find our Constitution Day celebration thing, and here it is. It is just to let you know before you leave on public access, that is going to be Sunday, September 21st. That's next Sunday, or not this Sunday coming up, but the Sunday afterwards. And it's going to be from noon to 4, and it's Fair Oaks Boulevard at the VFW Hall, or excuse me, not Fair Oaks Boulevard, but Fair Oaks, California, rather, in 8990 Krutov Way in Fair Oaks off of Hazel and Sunset. So check it out, and maybe you'll find out a little bit more about some of those other things the founding fathers were looking out for back in the day. So anyways, let's get back to the regular part of the show, though. So can remove this, I guess, but one of the other things that came out of this whole Charlie Kirk story that happened today was, of course, there were some people in the media who immediately jumped to mischaracterize it. And we've already shown you what this event was about. I mean, it was a whole bunch of people who were happy to be there. You saw them all cheering, it looked like thousands of people. Well, here was MSNBC's take on it, and see if you think that kind of represents what was going on there.
But talk to me about the environment in which a shooting like this happens.
Yeah, and again, to emphasize what you just emphasized, we don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this.
This is the absolute derangement of mainstream media. A supporter shooting their gun off. These are college campuses, and these are college students. I mean, where do they imagine they are? Somewhere out in the middle of the Yukon or in some backwater place? This is nuts. I mean, they're trying to characterize this event like somehow it was some fringe thing, and yet you all saw it. It was a college event, all kinds of supporters there cheering them on. They were college students.
But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
So here you have this MSNBC commentator essentially saying if it's things that don't agree with his ideas, they must be hateful, right? I mean, we saw what Charlie Kirk's exchange was with a student who didn't agree with him. That was a respectful discussion about real issues that are in front of our courts today. the idea of what a woman is, the idea of whether or not a person who is transitioning their sex should be allowed to participate in a certain classification of sports or take advantage of other things that are set apart for that category of people. And we have to have these discussions. And some people are so threatened by that they define it as hate. And that is the threat to free speech. So
that is a threat to our liberties. That's in our souls. That's a threat to all our rights, quite frankly. That fool that you just play on MSNBC is a guy named Matthew Dow. He used to be a Republican. Okay? He used to be a Republican. And I think he got a bad case of Trump derangement at some point in time. And now he's full on the left, espousing this dirtiness that is coming out of his mouth. Imagine that he will suggest that, maybe it could have been just one of his deranged, I guess, he really wanted to say one of his deranged supporters, the gun went off by accident or whatever, and shot, and with such precision, shot Charlie Kirk in his neck. This is sickness. This is sickness of unbelievable proportion. But the problem is, though, the left have a real problem, is that when they see violence that they think is good, quote unquote, they will find all sorts of justification for that violence. Whether we're talking about burning down cities in the summer of 2020, they'll find justification for that because that violence is okay. They like that kind of violence. Like social justice violence, which in their mind is always justified. But when they see violence that they don't like the January 6th, oh my goodness, insurrection. We have to do something. Oh God. And they go on and on. Up to now, they talk about January 6th, this January 6th insurrection. I don't even know where the hell that came from, but there we go. But this is the problem. This is the big problem in our society. We are seeing the media, and this is a very big problem. The media is getting in bed with the government, and in some of the biggest deceptions that man have ever known. How they characterize things like January 6th versus summer of 2020. How they characterize things is nothing but outright deception. And the bad thing about it is that these people are protected by our First Amendment. And I have no problem with that. People want to expose their views, whether left or the right. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is when you're masquerading as a journalist, but you're getting in bed with the government. This is horrible. And this is part of being on the Titanic and about to hit the iceberg. And we got to, these people, we have to call them out as often as we can because they are a big part of this deception game.
Yeah, it's a real issue of narrative, and of course that's part of what Charlie Kirk was fighting at the schools.
Yes.
Is to try to upend that narrative, right? A lot of this, it's not an accident that the media and the Democrats and the schools all seem to be on the same side, and that's because literally this stuff has been cycled through the colleges. So if the college is able to funnel a sort of a left-wing ideology that doesn't really have anything to resist it in the colleges because it's essentially government's dime that is funding most of this stuff in the front end of things, then they teach the next generation's K through 12 teachers, right? And then they go back in, and so they're going to be a little farther to the left. And then they're going to be teaching a whole bunch of kids that are now going to have a slightly left-wing edge. And also to consider that these are government monopolized schools, so you've got this ideology also is just naturally being pushed a little bit because you're not going to teach for the government and then think, oh, well, the government's just this horrible beast, and well, I'm teaching for it. I mean, most of them, it's just natural that they're going to think it's good what they're doing, and if they're economically literate, they don't see that there's other ways this can be done. They just assume the government has to do it. And so then they teach all these kids, and then these kids go back to the college, and they're a little more left wing by that point, and then the college professors become a little more left wing, and of course they're, the colleges are teaching all these things like journalism and everything, and it's just this vicious loop that just keeps sending it farther and farther to the left.
Well, you're absolutely, you're so right about that. I mean, who would have thought that we'll be sitting down here in 2025 and worried about our kids going to school? Johnny goes to school, and next thing you know, Johnny want to come home, and Johnny's is Joan. And where did Johnny get that from? From some teacher in the school who have no training in dealing with gender confusion or gender dysphoria. Have absolutely no training in that. But you know what? They know that Johnny should become Joan. And who would have thought that this is where we would have ended up? And again, it gets back to the whole point about government involvement in our lives. The public schools become centers of propaganda. And just like you said, the solution to this, the biggest part of the solution to this is school choice, or like our friend used to say, parental choice. That we need to free the schools so that these people, okay, they want to push their propaganda in their school, then they push the propaganda. When the students walk away, when the parents take their kids out, then they'll understand the nonsense that they're doing. But as long as they're protected by that big government, that big government that is so embedded in our life, as long as they're protected by that, they could keep on spilling their propaganda and spilling to our vulnerable young children.
And it's funny too, just like a lot of these people were threatened by people like Charlie Kirk coming to the campus and having an exchange of ideas that they don't agree with. They're just as threatened about having to compete in the free market to be a teacher or a college instructor or whatever, right? I mean, they want the government, controlling those jobs. They don't want to compete, right? That's the whole issue, right? The whole thing is one of fear and control, right? Instead of just letting these things happen and may the best ideas win, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anyways, on to our next story, I guess. There's some awfully rotten ideas in law enforcement and sort of racial applications of these things going on in a lot of our cities, in particular Charlotte. Recently, Charlotte, North Carolina exposed just this horrifying incident that happened on a train there. In fact, let's bring up the story. Obviously, if you are on social media at all, you have been wildly exposed to this over the last weekend. This actually happened several weeks ago, but the government was very slow to come out with the video from the train about what happened. And once they did, then the mainstream media was also very slow at reporting on it, although social media got a hold of this and they blew the story up, because this was a story of essentially this man in this red hoodie essentially just took it on himself to murder one of the other passengers, and for no apparent reason. And this person has a long record, a long criminal record, and they just keep getting put back out on the street. But let's we have a video that we've edited down, and it'll show parts of it, but we've edited out the most graphic parts, so you won't see that. But it's pretty appalling, and it's just an absolute, yet again, another senseless loss of life due to, I suppose you will see, but in my mind, these are Democrat policies that have just led to this sort of thing. So let's watch it.
By now, the entire world has seen this human piece of garbage stab this girl on a train for no reason whatsoever. The video, until now, stopped here, and the rest was left to imagination. But now we have more. Before I continue this, I will tell you there is no blood and the actual stab is not seen. But this video is horrific and nauseating. So that's your warning. Here's the continuation.
At this point, the woman probably doesn't realize it, but she has been fatally stabbed, and for no apparent reason. She is simply on her way home from an honest job at a pizza place, taking public transit.
And now she's left to cry as her life slips away, alone, because not a single person could offer her help or even an "are you okay?" You could give these people the benefit of the doubt, as perhaps they don't quite realize what happened, especially because it happened so quick and without warning. The guy walks down the train, which I've blurred to spare you the blood that's everywhere, and he seems to say, "I got that white girl." Then, while standing alone, he seems to utter his reason for this whole thing.
So apparently this woman's only aggression in this case is the mere fact that she's white. This guy, this deranged person, makes up the idea that somehow she called him the N-word, but anybody can go and watch the entire video, and it's out there, and it's horrifying. She doesn't say anything to him, right? So sounds like a convenient excuse to get away with murder. And that's a whole nother kettle of fish, the idea that we're allowing some people just a ridiculous, I guess, excuse that they can't control themselves if they're called a name. That's just absolutely beyond the pale. But put the shoe on the other foot. If you're not sure how to think about this, imagine if the races were switched of everybody sitting in that car. And what do you think the media story would be now? Because keep in mind, this video was not released until about 2 weeks after it happened. And even then, the mainstream media didn't pick it up. It was mainly picked up and driven by social media outrage. And that is what is finally causing the mainstream media to pick up on it. And one of the stories I've heard about that is maybe there is some sort of an election going on there right now, and maybe that could have played into this. I'm not sure. But it's just absolutely appalling what has happened in this story. Recall also there was the case just a few years ago of selfless hero Daniel Penny, who stood up to somebody on a subway train who was threatening to harm other passengers. And he stood up to defend them. And he was a white man, and he even had the help of, I believe it was either a black man or a Hispanic man that helped to hold this guy down. And that guy wound up dying through the use of this hold. But he was a threat to everybody, and they wanted to put him in jail. So if you wonder why people aren't doing anything on this train, I mean, we've kind of disincentivized anybody being a Daniel Penny.
After he leaves, you can hear some people finally discover what's happened.
So there's a little bit of the killers walking around the train that has been edited out, but by the time people understand what has happened and anybody is coming to her aid, it is about a minute and a half after the incident, which is obviously much too late if anything could have been done at all. And one other pertinent fact to this story, this guy was arrested and had also been jailed at least once, but he was arrested over 14 times before this incident occurred. And he looks like he's in his early 20s or late 20s or early 30s maybe. So this guy's out on the street, just nuts.
I think the guy's 32, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay, early 30s, yeah. Oh, a lifetime of derangement, and yet in and out. In fact, maybe I'll now's a good time to bring this one particular story here. So this is this is a nude weekend. They're talking about judges under scrutiny over DeCarlos Brown Jr. as criminal history revealed. And so this guy, like I said, he keeps getting out on cashless bail, being sent for psychiatric evaluation, and then he leaves, and then the public gets to deal with him again. and sadly,
over and over again, yes.
Yeah. And there's one thing I think is worth pointing out here too, and it's that this guy didn't, the kind of race hate this guy must have had didn't just come out of nowhere, right? I mean, it's not like people are born thinking this way, but I mean, if you look, I mean, I've been I'm in my early 50s. And ever since I've been in school, I could see this drip, this progressive drip of essentially infantilizing some groups of people, whether that be, people that the left thinks are black or Hispanic or whatever, and demonizing white people. And when you show this over and over and over again, like, keep on showing the same, version of some Hollywood movie about slavery, and that's all you ever show, you're going to wind up building up this hatred of people, and these ideas that, people want to think that you can tell whether somebody's a good guy or a bad guy based on their skin color. And
Exactly.
and that guy, for no reason, I got the white girl. I mean, how could anybody be so monstrous as to think that they can just determine if somebody's worth stabbing to death because of their skin color? I just can't even imagine what would make somebody think that way, except this drip, drip, drip that we get from the government of constantly trying to divide us by race and telling us how we're all different, instead of, I thought in the 80s when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, that this, we were heading in the direction of Martin Luther King's colorblind society. That's what I thought. And I don't know. I mean, we just seem to be constantly dividing ourselves over and over and over again. That's a core thing of the Democrats. I don't know what else.
This is the problem, there's a big problem within the Black community that nobody wants to talk about. Okay, it's fatherlessness. Okay, and a lot of these kids are growing up without fathers, no one to guide them, no one to discipline them, and the first time they encounter a real disciplinarian who wouldn't back down from them, the first time they do that is probably a police officer on the street. And then we hear about these police shootings, and everybody think, oh God, that cop is so racist. When the truth of the matter is that poor kid that is facing that police officer who is not going to back down, he's going to do his job, and he may have to shoot the person. That problem didn't begin the moment the police approached that person. That problem began 15, 20 years earlier, when the first disciplinarian in that child's life walked out of his life. Fatherlessness is a real problem in the Black community. It really is. But nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to close their eyes.
Well, and it doesn't. Yeah, sorry.
In prison.
Well,
Go ahead. Finish it. Go ahead. Say what you want to say.
I just wanted to say that's government coming in and pushing the dads away. I mean, it's in so many different ways that, between a welfare system that is set up to say, hey, we're going to help mothers essentially that don't have dads in the home. And, well, that's an incentive to push a dad out of the home, right? I mean, just all kinds of ways that the government, we have a terrible government-run education system it's almost a pipeline to prisons for a lot of kids. And then we have a drug war that is also incentivizing kids that don't have any skills after they leave the high school, and any training, that, hey, this is a way you can make money. Well, I mean, a lot of kids, if they have no other way they see to be successful, because this is where I mean, it's just one layer after another of government failure that is just. Anyway, sorry, Leon, go ahead.
No, but you took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to talk next about Lyndon Johnson and his Great Society program, and part of that was to push fathers out of the homes to help mothers and kids. But destroying the core family, especially in Black communities, have been a disaster. It has been an utter disaster. So here's this guy on that train. He's obviously somewhat deranged or whatever, and that kind of stuff. He claimed, okay, listen to what he claimed, and I mean, if the video is capturing it correctly, that he got the white girl, and also on top of that, he claimed the same white girl called him the N-word. Well, let us suppose that she did. Obviously, she did not, but let's suppose that she did. You telling me that he have learned somewhere that if somebody call you some dirty word okay, let us agree that the N word is a dirty word is for black people. If somebody calls you a dirty word, you have the right to now kill that person. That is where did he get that idea from? But this is the whole point of entitlements. People are now getting ideas, they're now getting rights that was never granted, not by God or not by the government. Never. That this guy feel he has this right to kill the white girl because she called him the N-word when there's no evidence that she ever did any of that. And the point about it, though, the justice system has become so corrupted on top of all of this, on top of all of the other mess that we see going on in the society. The justice system is so corrupted that this guy, listen, been arrested 14 times. I understand that his mother was trying to get him institutionalized. But what are the judges, the so-called judges, the person, the fair referees in our society? They keep letting him back on the street with this cashless bail thing until we come to this. And this girl who's coming home from an honest job in a pizza shop, and you know what happens to her? The guy just stand up behind her like the coward he is. He didn't even face her. He came from behind, stabbed her, killed her. She is a Ukrainian refugee trying to make her way in our great land. And now her life is cut short because some fool is in his head, totally deranged, think it was okay. Because we have a government who have made us so sensitive to the issue of race that any slight or perceived slight is enough for the death penalty. Yeah. This is madness. Yeah. This is madness. This is what's going on.
And that's part of this infantilization, I think. You know, the idea that, you know, if somebody calls you a name, you have no ability to control yourself. We're just going to assume you have no ability to control yourself if somebody calls you a name. That's what they're telling them, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I mean, and the infantilization of saying, oh, boy, we've got this crappy school system, but you're not making the grades. Well, that's okay. We'll pass you anyways. And then pretty soon the government high school degrees are worth nothing, right? And can't get you any kind of a job because, you know, they've been completely depleted of any value. And then that's what we're seeing start to happen in the colleges, where all these people are going to college and, oh, well, we're not seeing the groups we want to have the success. Well, we'll just pull away all the standards.
Yes.
And then we'll get the numbers faster.
Yeah, just get rid of the standards and everything will be cool. And then, and what happens at the end? We have a bunch of people coming out of these colleges and universities, and they can't find jobs with the so-called, they have these wonderful degrees. But you know what those degrees are? In some kind of Asian studies, African American studies, environmental science, which is not really science, and all this kind of crap. Okay? Nothing that could improve your productivity or improve your life out there. Is a bunch of nonsense. And all this social justice nonsense that they're teaching in the college and university today is not doing anything. It's just producing a bunch of people who can't get jobs when they come out of school. That's what's happening.
Well, and speaking of infantilization, I mean, part of this is, as we've talked about, the schools and the Democrat politicians who've been pushing this stuff, but it's also the media. And the media is also alive and well on this story too. And so we have Leon's favorite journalist, Abby Phillips.
I'm just insulted. I'm just insulted that you call her a journalist. But go ahead, keep going.
we're gonna show the hot take that's going on CNN about this, and believe it or not, they're also besmirching. This happened several days ago, and without knowing it, they're also besmirching Charlie Kirk, who. But let's watch and find out.
People have been looking for an opportunity to find a case like this, to make a point like this. I want to play, this is Charlie Kirk, why he says this hasn't gotten a lot of attention.
A white Ukrainian refugee was murdered just because she was white. Everybody knows that, obviously. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to the death.
Wow. He said white a lot.
Well, and so here we have essentially the Democrats and their media arm spinning the narrative that when something goes wrong under their management, it's the Republicans pounce thing or conservatives pounce. And so here they're attacking Charlie Kirk, like the guy we talked about earlier in the show, who died now fighting the good fight. But this is absolutely nuts. It's never about any responsibility with their own policies. It's always about, why are you noticing? But I did notice there's a little bit more in this clip that's worth seeing from Van Jones. So let's hear what he had to say.
But also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
You know, let me just say a couple of things. One is, I mean, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare. If you're in any public space, subway, whatever, that something bad's going to happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, is just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there'd be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out? It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who are hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
But as usual, the Democrat propaganda is wrong. As we all saw, the killer literally said it was about race. So don't buy the propaganda. But this is just horrifying. Again, it's look the other way. And the cashless bail thing, the guy's mom literally wanted him in jail, but the government let him out because cashless bail. Are you still a fan of Abby Phillips?
Yes. My favorite pseudo intellectual who thinks she's so brilliant, you know. And it just pains me so much to say that she has Trinidad roots. She actually lived in Trinidad she was born in Virginia, I believe, and she actually lived in Trinidad for a short while. Her parents had moved back there. She lived in Trinidad for about 4 or 5 years before she came back here. That woman is such an idiot, it's unbelievable. Okay. Now, you could look at that situation. You want to tell me Abby Phillip don't know, okay? Don't know if that situation was reversed in terms of the race, that we would not have seen maybe riots in the streets, okay? Look at what happened with the Daniel Penny. I think the guy's name was Gordon Neely, I believe. Look at what happened. Gordon Neely was on that train, a black man, threatening. Actually, I think one of the people that he was threatening was a pregnant woman, threatening people, okay? Daniel Penny, a white man, former Marine, jump in to protect those people on the train. Okay, you got him in a chokehold, and the chokehold may or may not have caused his death, but Gordon Neely ended up dying. Gordon Neely also had a bunch of psychological problems, and his father, who didn't do anything about it or try to help him get help, was suing Daniel Penny after the fact because Daniel Penny supposedly murdered his son. But everybody knows, and these CNN so-called reporters, they know if that guy was white and the person he killed was black and stabbed her like he did, everybody know there'll be riots and all kind of stuff in this country. But the left love to deny this thing when violence is done and the wrong people get killed, quote unquote. The wrong people get killed. They love to deny reality. These so-called reporters, these so-called journalists. This is what is causing the divisions within our society. This is what is taking us further and further away from that day, from that glorious day that Martin Luther King spoke about dreaming about his 4 little children living in a society where they live, where they are judged, not by the color of their skin. No, not by the color of the skin, but by the content of their character. It's taking us further away from that. And these so-called liberals who care so much about people like me, who trying to help people like me, people with my sort of skin color, they think that their policies are doing anything but destroying the Black communities throughout this America. Look at the inner cities of America. How did that happen? Democratic policy. Look at the crime that we're seeing right now. And they're up in arms because Trump went into DC. Trump went into DC, yes, he sent the National Guard into DC. You know that they're mad at Trump, and they're not mad at the criminals who's causing all sorts of mayhem in Washington, D.C., which is supposed to be our capital. This is insanity. This is complete insanity. And we just keep going, allowing these people to give us these narratives, and some people are believing this nonsense without even checking it. Believe the nonsense that, oh my goodness gracious, this poor guy had a problem, so his best answer to the problem was to just stab this woman. This poor woman who was just sitting on the train on her phone, and now she's gone.
Well, and it's interesting too, you bring up the issue of the policing in all of these cities. Well, this is not happening in a vacuum. This was not a one-off in Charlotte. Right. In fact, in researching for this story, I accidentally thought it was the wrong city. I assumed when I first saw that picture, must be New York. Right? That was my first thought. But sure enough, there was actually a stranger just about 2 weeks ago stabbed somebody in the face on the subway in New York. So, I mean, this stuff is happening constantly in all of these cities. An amazing amount of crime that is just going on in these places. And that's causing Trump to threaten to essentially send the troops to Chicago to wind up helping to get things under control, as he did with Washington, D.C. And Washington, it's not as controversial because it constitutionally it's not a separate state. So it is a federally controlled district. But with the states and cities in those states, it is a little more controversial. But that is causing Trump, though, to talk about expanding his powers here. And we have a little video of him talking about his response to this story that happened in Charlottesville. And of course, failure of the left in policing is leading maybe to yet another expansion of federal government. So let's watch this video.
Also a horrible killing recently in Charlotte, I talked about, and so many others. When you have horrible killings, you have to take horrible actions.
And this is the problem here, that we Democrats have done such a terrible job managing crime, protecting people's property rights in their own cities, that now we have a potential expansion of power from the federal government. And it's anyways, let's hear more of what Trump has to say about it.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people, really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. And here's a picture of it. This is the picture of it. And this is a picture of the woman, a beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot. And it's time to stop this madness. The people of our country need to insist on protection, safety, law, and order. We have proven that it can be done because we did it right here in D.C., in District of Columbia. The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way. It can be done. It can happen fast. All we want is, please, Mr. President, we need help. Chicago needs help. Other cities need help. We'll do what has to be done because we're going to make America safe again.
And so there you have it. And, you know, I mean, I sympathize with what he is saying, but, you know, I mean, this is an expansion of government because of another government area of another area of government failure, right? I mean, these cities are failing to do their jobs, and now suddenly here comes the government to get bigger and expand it. It just want to make your head hurt, you know, all this stuff.
You know, I mean, as you rightfully said, the Washington D.C. is a federal district. It's controlled by the federal government, even though they have some kind of self rule. And Trump have every legal authority to send the National Guard into there to clean up the city, and that city badly needed cleaning up. And they seem to be having some success. There's no doubt about that. But this thing about these other cities, there's a real constitutional problem here for Trump. And like you said, I too agree with Trump's sentiment on this. Okay, because crime in these cities are beyond horrible. I mean, God Lord, Chicago is like a war zone, right? On steroids, I would say. And I could understand why Trump would want to send in the National Guard like he did in DC. But there's a real constitutional issue here about the separation between the authorities of the federal government versus the authorities of the state. I think he can do so if there's some kind of declared emergency, he could probably send in the National Guard. But I don't see how he'll accomplish that unless the governor of the states agree to allow the National Guard to be activated within the cities within that state. So it's I mean, but you're right. You're absolutely right. It's an expansion. It's an expansion of government power, and it's an expansion of the use of the National Guard. But I don't know how he'll get around that. I mean, because JB Pritzker, who is the governor of Illinois, is totally against Trump sending in any National Guard. But you know, the thing that I don't understand about this thing, okay, that I truly do not understand, okay, while you're absolutely right, this is an expansion of government power, the federal government in this particular case. But the people involved, J.D. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson, who is the mayor Brandon Johnson is the mayor of Chicago, they are opposed. They hate Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump more than they love their own citizens. So even if there's a constitutional issue, there are ways at which it could be worked out. You want to tell me Brandon Johnson cannot look in his own city and seeing what is going on just over Labor Day weekend? I think 50, 60 people were shot and about 7 or 8 of them end up dead. And he can't look in his own city and say, wait a second, we have a real problem here. Maybe we need help. He cannot talk to the governor of the state, and then the governor of the state talks to Donald Trump, and they work out something that is constitutionally within the boundaries and have the National Guard come in there and help them solve these problems. They could if they wanted to, but they hate Trump more than they love their constituents. And this is a problem. This Trump derangement syndrome is causing people to make some choices that are just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Look at Washington, D.C. right now. people starting to feel comfortable again. The citizens starting to feel comfortable again. They walk in the streets a little bit at night now and that kind of stuff since the National Guard have come in there. But there are still people that you see on TV. My favorite journalist, as you like to call her, is one of them who's still talking about the fact that, well, we don't know if this is a good idea. Donald Trump do this, Donald Trump do that, Donald Trump do the other. Well, he did everything within his own authority to start with, so I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But they're still trying to tear down the idea of using the National Guard to take care of a very serious problem, which is the safety of our fellow citizens. And these people are sick. They're really sick. But so if I mean, like I said, I understand Trump's sentiment. He has a real a heavy lift constitutionally, but this could be worked out. This could be worked out if these governors and the mayor will come up with some plan whereby they could allow Trump to send in the National Guard to help them, because obviously they can't solve this problem by themselves.
Yeah. Well, this is though where I think we're almost missing the forest for the trees, though, because it's true that if you have a bunch of guards out on the street, maybe you're going to have a little less crime in the short term. But the real problem here is that we have a criminal justice system that is, one, it's not putting away problem criminals, and two, it's not doing anything to reform these people while they are in custody, right? I mean, so you've got a complete failure of a system. The woman who was the judge in Charlotte who let this guy out, I guess, so many times, my understanding is she has no law degree. All of her stuff is this DEI background type of stuff, where it's all about social justice stuff. And so, I mean, you're putting people in positions of power. And then to top it off, it sounded like she had a conflict of interest beyond all that, where she had ownership in the health facility that she was sending people to in lieu of jail, to go get mental health. So, I mean, this is just absolutely nuts, and no amount of police in the long run is going to fix that problem. And, you may, make these people sort of hide in the shadows for a little while, but ultimately you're still going to wind up having that problem that those bad people are still going to be running around. They're just maybe going to be a little farther in the shadows is all. So,
well, you raise a good point, Jason, but the intent in my mind was never that we just send in the National Guard, the people hide in the shadows, and then you leave and then they go back to their quote unquote normal activity. No, the idea was that this sending the National Guard, that was that was phase one, part one. But you also have to reform the criminal justice system. You also have to look a little deeper at some of these radical judges and some of the decisions that they're making in the judiciary that is causing having this revolving door, usually caused by cashless bail and all that kind of stuff. You have to do a few things in parallel. But the short-term problem we have right now is that the citizens of Chicago, the citizens of any major city in this country are totally unsafe because of crime. Innocent people have no part of some of the activities that are going on, and they're being killed because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So in the short term, we can try to get people safe by using the National Guard. But at the same time, we have to work on different things that will hopefully last beyond the tenure of the National Guards in those cities. We have to. Otherwise, you go back to exactly what you're saying.
I think the best way to solve this problem is to rely less on government, rely more on the Second Amendment. I think if there had been more Daniel Pennies, more armed Daniel Pennies, maybe if this woman had been armed on that train, you wouldn't have people who, this guy stabbed her with impunity, right? He stabbed her and nobody moved to do anything about it. She had no way to retaliate. And to me, I think, if you had a Second Amendment society, you might see that much more polite society, because somebody like that guy who stabbed that woman wouldn't last long in a Second Amendment society, right? I mean, maybe he gets wounded a couple times, but pretty soon he's going to be out of the picture. And ultimately, that's what we want, right? I mean, we want a society where people behave better and not think that they can, with impunity, just go and take somebody's life. It's just absolutely nuts. So,
well, that get back to what I'm trying to say. There are several things that we can do in parallel, and excuse me. And one of those things, and you're absolutely right, you raise a very good point about the Second Amendment. One of those things that we definitely have to do is look at all these gun control laws that we have and all these gun-free zones that we have in these major cities. Because obviously, gun control, everybody knows that gun control laws are just happy days for criminals. But we have to be able, along with doing these other things, sending the National Guard and all that kind of stuff, we have to look deeply at arming the citizens of these cities so they could protect themselves. Because right now they are defenseless, and the criminals are just roaming free and committing crimes as they damn well please. We just saw it in the video. Yeah. But you're right. You raise a good point. We also have to allow people to arm themselves. Yes.
Well, and even more to the point, you can't have an officer on every train car. And I actually heard that I think there was some sort of an officer on one of the other train cars in that train. But if he's not on the right train car, it doesn't do anybody any good. So
it could be a problem. That's true. Very true.
Well, of course, maybe he prevented something on the other train car.
Yes. He didn't prevent this one from happening. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that's that sort of gives us an eyeball into that thing. I guess we're right about near the end of the show. I think probably it's a good time to jump into our Knucklehead Noise Patrol and end on something a little bit lighter, and that is Philadelphia Phillies Karen, I guess, and her ball snatching ways. I know you may be scratching your head at this point about what that could mean, but let's jump into the story, and then I think you'll find out what we're talking about here.
The woman splashed out on the left, going to put the fight-ins in fighting.
It's the grab now seen around the globe. Phillies fans scrambling after Harrison Bader sent a home run ball flying into the stands during Friday's game against the Marlins. One man emerging victorious, gifting the ball to his son who was celebrating a birthday. But watch as a woman storms over to them.
His dad gets the ball for his kid. Nice family moment. What? And so she decided to ruin it. She said, I saw it first.
So let's hear from the father and son.
Wasn't even in the row.
That father and son, Andrew and Lincoln Feltwell, now speaking out about the catch and confrontation on GMA.
Heard the crack of the bat, watched the ball go up in the air, and I knew it was going to the right, but I didn't know where. So I just started going to the right a little bit, hit a chair and bobbled between the armrests, and I picked it up, turned around, and felt like Super Dad, walked back to Lincoln, put it in his glove, and gave him a hug.
It was exciting getting our first home run ball ever from all our games.
So here's another angle of this person who's now being described as Phillies Karen, irately coming after this kid's ball.
When she screamed in my ear, that's when everybody saw how shocked I was. And, when I turned, I had to lean back because she was really close. She had many, many inappropriate words to say around my kids. And all I could think was, make her go away.
The pops does the right move. He says, I've got time for this. I'm trying to have a nice night with my family.
Yeah, I'm good.
Gives the woman the ball.
Fortunately, in a play of good sportsmanship, both the Phillies and the Marlins came together to rescue this kid's night.
As for that young Phillies fan, both teams chipping in to create a happy ending.
A good deed does go noticed.
The Marlins gifting him a bag full of goodies, and after the game, Harrison Bader himself sending Lincoln home with a signed baseball bat.
But the story doesn't end there, as everybody is trying to figure out who Phillies Karen is. Obviously, they want to take out the rage on her with memes and other things, I guess, to get back at her from this display at this baseball game. So I'll show a few memes here. And it's funny, even this sport called Banana Ball, which is sort of a parody on baseball, the mascots came together and did a satire of what happened here.
Anything just for YouTube? I'm thinking about you guys. I knew you were. I could see it in your eyes. We love you. We really do. Hope you guys are having a great time in the chat, too. Yeah, I like Tickle Toes going, I want to know. We got Riley Rep Swifty going, hey, hey, baby. I like the singing, and we love loving Banana Lands. About that. Oh! What? We're going to get another look at this once we get back to True TV. Radbud and Fluffman, boy, they thought they had a souvenir. The Grinch came swooping in.
So, yeah, pretty soon they may start calling Karen the Grinch. But there's some interesting things that are going on in this story that I thought were worth bringing up. I mean, one, it's an issue that I don't think they've identified the woman yet. They're calling her Philadelphia Karen for lack of not knowing her name. And so, there's this huge move out to potentially cancel her. I mean, people want her to be fired from her job. Just all kinds of crazy stuff. And it does bring up the issue too, is, what are the rules of property rights? Because here you have this ball that's hit into a random area, right? And then everybody, at least the etiquette that I've always been aware of at a game, is the first person who manages to get control of that ball is the owner of the ball. They get to keep the ball. And here we have this woman who just seems to think that because the ball landed in a seat next to her, that it's her ball. And I don't know. Anyways, what do you think about this whole story, Leah?
I mean, I think this woman is beyond ridiculous. Okay, seriously. Because as far as I know, is that once a ball get into the stand, whoever gets to the ball first, they own the ball. The father did. Okay, obviously he did. Now, this gets back to something we spoke about earlier in the show. This sense of entitlement. That woman she's on somebody else's property to start with, okay? Which is whoever owns the stadium. I don't know who owns the stadium, but somebody owns that stadium, and it's not her. So she's on somebody else's property. Somebody hit a ball into the thing. It is nobody's property while that ball is in the air. Once it hit in the stadium, which is somebody else's property, it is whoever get the damn ball first. The father did. But that woman feels she's entitled to it. Now, where did she get that from? Where did you think she got that from? From all these entitlements that we have within that spreading around this country, the entitlement programs that we have. She have this sense of entitlement. She have to have that ball. Now, quite frankly, if I were in that father's place, I don't know if I would have given up the ball, quite frankly. I don't think so. No, seriously, I might have a problem with her, but I don't think I would have given up the ball. Now, I could understand the father's position. It's his son's birthday, and that woman is obviously going off her rockers in front of his children, and you want to protect the children from any sort of bacchanal, shall we say, any sort of difficulties that may occur if you refuse to give her the ball. But I would have tried to say, let's go talk about it someplace else, but I don't think I would have given her the ball. I really don't think so. Because I do not see how she got property rights in that ball. I didn't take it out of her hand. I didn't take it from inside her bag or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't understand how she gained these property rights. I don't know. So I don't think I would have given her the ball. But it would have been a hard call if my kids. I used to take my children to professional basketball games when they were younger. And if something like that, if the equivalent of that occurred, I mean, it would have been a difficult call for me to get in a confrontation with somebody over, say, a ball of some kind or some sort of, whatever, some sort of something that came from the game or anything like that. So I kind of understand the father's position. But if I was there, I don't think I would have given her that ball. I don't think so. I think that Karen would have to go jump in a lake somewhere. Yeah, I think so.
I just love this particular meme that I saw after the story started breaking. And the idea that if she felt that entitled for the ball, why didn't she follow them into the hallway to get the bat too? That's mine too.
Oh God.
It really is kind of nuts though, because everybody's jumping in on the action. I mean, I've heard that people have even like offered them free things like trips to I think the World Series and all kinds of other things, and it's getting everybody in on this story. So I mean, this story, if it wasn't for I think what happened in Charlotte and then what just happened with Charlie Kirk, I think this would still be the main story. But we live just at every day there's something new, and that's so scary. But yeah,
the entitled society. That is what we have become. That we have become the entitled society. Even this woman who have no property rights whatsoever in that ball thinks she's entitled to it. This is madness, Jason. This is madness.
And one of the reasons I like this story too is because that's the whole core issue of libertarian ideas is property rights, right? And how do you define who owns what? And it all starts with you own yourself, and then you own your labor, therefore, and then you own, therefore, the products of your labor, you know, assuming that you haven't rented out your labor to somebody else. Right? So I mean, these are the, you know, issues of how it all flows. And of course, here's an issue with a ball that lands in this place, and everybody's fighting about it, right? And I think almost everybody identified that. And it's also an issue too. You didn't need government to come in here, right? I mean, here's an issue that's resolving itself. She didn't get the ball, or the kid didn't get the ball, but everybody found a way to work it out, and they didn't need to bring the state into it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, imagine, you know, there'd be some government commission that decides who gets that ball, and you know, maybe 6 months later we'll look into resolving it, and by the time that happens, oh, sorry, the ball got lost.
The ball got lost. Yeah. We misplaced the ball. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, there's an issue here too of freedom of association, and if you looked at, I guess, what was happening there in that stadium, and let me pull up one other issue there, but this was, you know, we were seeing images of the entire crowd booing this woman, and of course she was giving everybody then the finger with the ball. But now it's like everybody wants to know who she is so they can disrespect her. Well, that's part of freedom of association, right? If your behavior is so horrible, that's part of the liberty way to address things. You don't need to bring in government. You just say, hey, we don't want you here anymore. And actually, the owner of the Phillies said this woman is banned from the Philly Stadium.
Right, there you go. Right, so it's like go back and say she was on somebody else's property, acting like the fool she acted as.
Yeah. So
I don't know how she got. I still don't understand how she got property rights to that ball. I'm still trying to understand that.
Like you said, Leon, entitlement. A strange case of entitlement.
Exactly. Yes.
But I tell you what, we're just about here at the end of the show, and let me see if I can pull up the notification for the
Constitution Day.
Gosh, did I lose that thing again?
Oh God!
I swear I had that thing up here, and it is. Oh, there it is. There it is. So here is the notification for. Oh, excuse me. I have got to share it too.
There we go.
Here is the notification again for Constitution Day. Again, just a reminder: if you're in the Sacramento area, it's going to be this about a Sunday and a half from now, September 21st, noon to 4. And it's going to be at the VFW Hall on 8990 Krutoff Way in Fair Oaks. So definitely check it out. It's a family-friendly thing, and there'll be a lot of people who are, I guess, share your values and liberty, hopefully, up there. So fun place to go. And I think as we leave the show, I just wanted to bring up again Charlie Kirk and his quote, you know, if you want to be a rebel on college campus, fight for freedom. You know, I just want to give one last, you know, rest in peace to Charlie, because, man, he sure lived life to its fullest in those 31 years. So Leon, any thoughts before we leave?
Yeah, and I would join you in saying, Charlie, rest in eternal peace. I never met you, but you were certainly a political friend. So rest in peace, my good man. And my thoughts and prayers are with your wife, I believe her name is Erica, and your 2 children. Rest in eternal peace, brother.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And until next time, think of what you can do in your community to move the ball for liberty. Certainly, Charlie Kirk was an example of that, somebody who pulled himself up from his own bootstraps to move the ball for liberty for all of us. So thank you so much, Charlie Kirk. And thank you out there for watching us. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.